Welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Nick Tassel at The Inefficient 2. Taking a look at pitching for Thursday's slate here, and it's not a pretty one. And you joked around with me earlier. I sent you a Slack message and was like, "Oh man, pitching's awful." And you said, "What do you mean? We got Wade Miley." So
I mean, if you think about it, it's not a bad play. It's not a great play either, but his opponent isn't the best in the Padres, so it's something you might have to think about.
yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, he kind of comes in as, relatively the top option on the slate, which is kind of scary, and that really sums things up.
I just don't like his price tag, though. I think it's a little high, especially at DraftKings. But
Yeah,
it is what
8,900
it
is a little
is.
steep,
Hmm.
but 8,300 on FanDuel is not a bad option. And really, around him, it's not looking good either.
No, so let's just get right into it.
Yeah, 7:05 here. Red Sox and Orioles. You got Rick Porcello, Ubaldo Jimenez, 9.5 over under here. Boston -123 favorites in Camden Yards. Not a big fan of that. Porcello, he's the only qualified pitcher on this slate as far as innings wise who has an ERA under 4 in this night slate. So it's tough to make a case for him. But I think cash game wise, a win's likely. He's kind of controlled damage, which you like. I'm not a fan of the price tag, but I think on this slate he's an all right cash game option.
Yeah, I'm just scared of the ballpark, and you look at that Baltimore Orioles offense. They got to Joe Kelly early and just kept pounding it on. I know they had a little struggles against Eduardo Rodriguez, but he's a much better pitcher, in my opinion, than Rick Porcello. I know Porcello's been a little bit better this year, but he's slowly regressing back to his old form. He just gives up too many hits to really be effective in a DFS format.
Yeah, and that's the issue. If he gives up 7 or 8 hits on DraftKings, it's a problem. The only thing I can kind of bank on is probably a likely win. And maybe, you look at this Baltimore team, they do strike out quite a bit against right-handers, at 23.6%. So, if he does get a run or give us up maybe 3 or 4 runs, you kind of hope he can balance it out with Ks.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the only real good thing that's going for him is he could get a couple of strikeouts than he usually does. But the Camden Yards effect kind of is throwing me off here as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And Ubaldo Jimenez, it's impossible to really target this Boston offense right now. And as inefficient as he's been, it's an easy fade.
Yeah, absolutely. His price is extremely low. It's kind of tempting, but you just have to stay away from any pitcher against the Red Sox right now. I think the last pitcher who actually had a good outing against them was Kluber, and that was, I think, a week and a half ago.
Yeah, John Gray wasn't too bad for the Rockies. He threw a solid outing.
That was the Clay Buchholz game, right?
Yeah.
Where JBJ lost his hit streak. It's all Buchholz' fault.
He hit 2 to the warning track, so it's kind of like, what are you going to do? It's tough luck.
In Colorado, that would have been a home run.
Oh, for sure, yeah. On the next game here, Brewers and Phillies, and you got Chase Anderson versus Gerard Eichhoff. Over-under of 8, Philly -129 favorites, and these two opponents are by far some of the weaker options, but I feel like this is somewhat of a trap here as far as pitching targets, and that means Chase Anderson against the Phillies. I'm not quite sure these guys go out and get it done either.
Yeah, the only guy I would think about would be Eichhoff, just because he's been really solid at home, 2.18 ERA, which is really shocking for us. Citizens Bank Park, and he is coming off a 7 strikeout performance. And you look at the Brewers, they're really not that good of an offense. They strike out a decent amount, not too much, but I think he might be able to kind of have a nice little outing against them. But for Chase Anderson, I'm just staying away. I still think the Phillies offense, although they're not very good, they're just kind of a pesky team that can really hurt a DFS starter.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think Eichhoff's kind of intriguing just because he's really tough on right-handers. 273 WOBA allowed. His real struggles have come with lefties. 370 WOBA allowed, but you look at this Brewers team, outside of Scooter Gennett, they don't have any real lefty threat to kind of get to that. So I think it is an intriguing option. Once again, I think you are probably limiting yourself to GPPs only just because cash game-wise, it's choosing 2 starting pitchers on DraftKings is almost impossible here.
Yeah, it's a tough one. In regards to Eichhoff, I really like his price on FanDuel, only 7,000. You can do a lot with roster construction if you throw him into a GPP. So I think that's another upside there for him.
Yeah, and he's got big time upside. I mean, you look at that Brewers team; they strike out a 27% clip against right-handers. So, yeah, I think the more I'm looking into it, I think Eichhoff's going to be actually probably a popular play. The more I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but there's really not too much to choose from on this slate. So I kind of agree with you. He might get a little uptick in ownership.
Next game here, you got Royals and Indians. Yordan Ventura versus Carlos Carrasco. Cleveland minus 156 favorite there, over under a 7.5, the lowest on the slate. Carrasco coming off the DL, he's going to be on just an 80 pitch limit, and that kind of brings me down a little bit on him because he is over 10K. So I don't think it's worth paying up for 10K for a guy who's going to be on an 80 pitch count, especially against a team that doesn't strike out a ton. They just kind of chip away at you. They make you work, and I don't see him turning off enough upside.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Going into this matchup, if he didn't have a pitch count limit, I think he'd be probably the top guy, even though it is against Kansas City, just because they have so many injuries. They're throwing in Paulo, Orlando, and Drew Butera and Whit Merrifield, so it's really not the same Royals offense. And you look at Carrasco, he's a career 3.5 ERA against the Royals. So there is a little bit of an upside here with him, but just because he's going to be on that pitch count, it's really kind of goes out the window. And like you said, over 10K on both sites, you could use your money somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. And Yordan Ventura on the other side, I mean, he's been a guy who hasn't been good this season. 1.53 whip on the year. The strikeout rate's been lower. He's a guy who I can't get behind even at the price considered.
No, I know he's pretty cheap on both sites, but he's been a disappointment whenever I've rostered him this year and for the most part of last year too. So he's one guy I'm staying away. You look at the Indians, and they still have some big bats in that lineup that could kind of cause trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Next game here, you got Pirates and Marlins. Juan Nicasio, Wei-Yin Chen, over under of 8. Miami minus 114 favorites. Nicasio, I mean, he's had his ups this season. I think for me, he's an intriguing GPP option as far as an SP2 on DraftKings. I don't like the price tag on FanDuel. He's had some good starts this season. This Miami team's sort of slumping from their beginning of season ways. Overall, I mean, over the last 2 weeks, they rank 18th in WOBA. Nicasio, I mean, a decent strikeout rate of 23%. So it's not perfect, but this slate, I think he's kind of a viable, cheap SP2 option in GPPs.
Yeah, I actually don't mind either one of these starters. I know they're really not that good, but their price tag is pretty low. And this game's in my Marlins Park, so it's not really a park that is a hitter's park. It's going to help the pitchers for the most part in this matchup, and they're kind of mediocre, and these offenses, in my opinion, aren't the best. Like you said, Miami's kind of regressed a lot, and you look at Pittsburgh, they're really up there in a lot of the statistics for the offense, but overall, I don't really see them as that good of an offense. And I know Wei-Yin Chen has some struggles in his past, but he actually hasn't been that awful this year.
Yeah, we kind of weren't expecting. I mean, coming out of Camden Yards from last year, expecting him to turn in a better season, but he's been relatively the same kind of guy who still allows home runs at times. But overall, I mean, he can churn in a decent quality start, and I think that is kind of viable for both these guys in this game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you look at Chen, and he had the issues last year, all his career basically giving up home runs at Camden Yards, going to a National League team inside Marlins Park. You think he'd be a lot better, and he's kind of, like you said, just kind of been the same. So don't really have too high expectations for him, but it's still a spot here where I think he could potentially get the win against Nicasio. I know Pittsburgh's a better team overall, but you never know really what could happen.
Yeah, Vegas has this one as a pick 'em, and you like the park factors. And I do think 2 quality starts are certainly a possibility here.
Absolutely.
Next one here, you got Yankees and Tigers. Michael Pineda, Matt Boyd, over-under of 9. And this is a situation, I mean, Pineda's been horrendous this season. And I think outside of course, the Tigers kind of come in as maybe really the second team to stack there, just with how bad he is. And this game, over-under 9, just kind of screams stay away.
Yeah, and I know you like the park factor in Detroit, but Detroit's actually been allowing a decent amount of runs this year, home runs as well. So I'm definitely staying away from Pineda in this matchup. He just really hasn't shown anything this year. It's just been pretty awful. And this Tigers' offense at any moment could really go off. So it's something I'm going to stay away from.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Next one here, you got Rays and Twins, Matt Moore versus Kyle Gibson, 8.5 over/under. Tampa Bay -117 favorites. Once again, I think kind of just slate dependent. We're being forced into playing some guys that we usually wouldn't play, and Matt Moore is kind of one of them. But with this team, I mean, Miguel Sano on the DL, so that kind of takes a big right-handed bat out of this order. And you look at this Twins team, they're not that great against lefties as they usually were in the past. I mean, 28th in WOBA this year, 24% strikeout rate. Moore is a guy who come in and get it done, but he also has a very low floor, which is why he's strictly GPP only. But I could see him kind of working a big strikeout upside game here.
No, absolutely. You look at Moore a few years ago, he was dominant, had a crazy stretch where he was so good, and then I believe Tommy John surgery set him back really far, and he really is yet to regain his old form. They say a lot of pitchers come back better after Tommy John, but he's just been extremely inconsistent since. But I agree with you on all the points about the Minnesota offense, and he really could probably have a pretty good day against them.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's had a couple of games with 20-plus DraftKings points, and 8,100 is not bad. And you look 7,200 on FanDuel. I mean, that's definitely worth a GPP shot because you can fit essentially whatever bats you want.
Absolutely, but like you said, he does have the blow-up potential. It's probably one of the better guys on this slate who could really just blow up at any time. But he still has pretty good upside. It's one of those things where his upside isn't as good as the potential of him getting blown out.
Yeah, definitely. It's a high risk, high reward situation there.
Yeah, but it's something that probably could pay off, especially against this Twins team. And
yeah,
his price tag is pretty good. So the more I talk about it, I think I kind of like him in this matchup.
Yeah. Kyle Gibson on the other side, I mean, kind of your average right-hander. This Rays team, they haven't been great against right-handed pitching. They do have a high strikeout rate, but Kyle Gibson doesn't miss enough bats for me to kind of use him as a viable option here.
Yeah, he's an okay pitcher, but he really doesn't do anything for DFS purposes.
Yeah. And speaking of not doing anything for DFS purposes, we had Decors. So this is one where this has been by far the best Coors series as far as offense goes so far this season. And I think tonight's going to be pretty much an epic finale with these two pitchers.
No, I agree with you. If you read my home run article, whenever Alfredo Simon's pitching, I always have him in there because he is so terrible. And you look on the other side with Eric Butler, he's pretty bad too. So there's going to be a lot of runs in this game. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you look at Alfredo Simon, if he only goes 3 innings, that bullpen's coming in, which is a league worst bullpen, and they're definitely going to give up plenty more.
Yeah, and after most likely being used a lot the last few days, it's slim pickings in that bullpen.
Yeah, definitely. Last game of the night here, you got Mariners and Padres. Seattle -143 favorites. Over-under is 7.5. Wade Miley versus Colin Rea. And Miley is an intriguing option. And as you mentioned, you're not a big fan of the price tag. But with the dynamic pricing on DraftKings, you can kind of understand why they went that way. And overall, I mean, in that ballpark, he's going to face a team that's an NL ball club, so they're not going to have the DH. That's going to be a bump for him. And you just look at this Padres team, a big-time strikeout rate. The WOBA's always low. And Miley's just coming in. I think he's just going to be that guy who just gets the job done tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the Padres, like you said, they have the second worst WOBA on the season. They really don't do much, and they have a low walk rate, which will really help Wade Miley because he sometimes struggles with that. But to me, he's really kind of like Rick Porcello, where he just gives up a lot of hits. But I don't know. I keep going back and forth, and I just think this Padres team is really that bad that he's going to have a pretty decent night. There's a lot of negative signs against Wade Miley because he hasn't had that good of a year, but I just keep coming back to the Padres. It's really easy to throw even mediocre starting pitchers against them and have good outings.
Yeah, and to kind of go with Miley, it seems that there are some downsides with about every other pitcher on the slate. So it's, you got that situation where, yes, it's a great matchup and that's something, but with all these guys, there's definitely some negatives to make you kind of be concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, to me, I've only seen there's only been one start from Wade Miley this year where he scored more than 20 DraftKings points, and that was against the Royals. He had 30 plus, so he really hasn't shown too much spurts. He's going to kind of be in the middling area of like about 15 fantasy points, and kind of on this slate with all the bad pitchers, it actually wouldn't be too bad. It's just that price tag, you kind of want more fantasy points than just that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think that's going to kind of be where it's going to be crucial to hit on your bats because they are going to be your high scorers and they are going to need your carrying your pitching because I just don't see a ton of upside from a lot of these pitchers and a lot of safety where guys just have an immediate 20-point floor.
No, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of scoring on this slate here. So like you said, you really got to nail the bats.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to wrap things up here with the pitcher nail down. Be sure to check out DailyFantasyCafe.com for all our great tools and content.